president should be announcing and saying, listen, we've got to move away from the coastlines, as far away from the coast as they can. Is like there isn't a timetable, there's an event timetable, but the president has been trying to announce it since last September. So first they tried with the emergency broadcast system. That didn't work. And then, believe it or not, I mean, you think if you're president, you can just announce whatever the hell you want. And no, you can't, because there are people, the elite and the rich and the powerful, don't want you to stop going to your job. I mean, if they announced the whole truth, do you think anyone would show up for their job? Now, I live on a mountaintop in the middle of the Maine coast because Maine was held down by glaciers. And it's slowly rising, so once the crust comes free of the core, it's just going to pop up another 500 feet. So I'll be doing fine with a 600-foot tidal wave. But Florida, that's actually going to sink. The UK, that's going to sink. Japan is going to sink. So a lot of places, it isn't just a matter of a 600-foot tidal wave. And then, of course, all the ice in the whole world is in the wrong place, so that's going to melt. So the Zetas say the final sea level is going to be 700 feet above present. So the president isn't going to say what's going to happen. He's going to say there's a planet in between the Earth and the Sun, that he would turn it over to NASA, which would say, yes, there's a rogue planet, but we were prohibited by national security, but don't worry about it. Go back to sleep. If anything's going to happen, we'll tell you. And then maybe they turn it over to NOAA, which is saying, well, this huge Earth wobble is what's causing all this weather. They're never going to admit that global warming and climate change were a lie, because can you imagine the lawsuits? It would bring the whole world to a halt, because how many hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on reducing fossil fuels? And, the thing is Planet X is roiling the magma, so the magma's circulating closer to the bottom of the crust, so the seafloors are warming, and the ice is melting from underneath. But the actual truth is the Arctic just had one of the coldest winters in years, and the amount of ice that formed this winter in the Arctic is unbelievable. Antarctica has been gaining ice. The top of the Himalayas and a lot of these glaciers are gaining ice. So this whole global warming thing, they're never going to use that phrase again. They would rather die than say global warming. So, I don't know how he's going to put it, but my opinion is he's got to announce it. And meanwhile, the government is doing all these strange things, like ordering 1.2 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition. They're going to arm these Social Security employees, and the National Weather Service employees are all going to be packing with hollow point bullets. I mean, come on, who thinks that's normal? What are they expecting? And of course, there's going to be some people who are going to riot and steal and loot, be out of control. But yet, if they do announce it, then people will go, well, this is something that we're all facing together. Let's work together to save as many people as possible. But they've got to do it sooner than later. Now, I live on a mountaintop. I heat with wood. I've got an outhouse. I'm ready for no electricity and no fuel. I live in a forest. I've got wood all around me. So, my theory is if you're ready for pole shift today, then you're going to be ready for it whenever else you can. But if you notice, around the world, the economy has not been getting better, regardless of what they're saying. And people are realizing every day that everything they've worked for all their lives is coming to naught. And hopefully people will say, well, really, what is important? And they'll realize, every time you see a disaster, you see people say, well, I lost everything, but, at least we all survived. And, that's what's important. And people are going to start realizing, well, maybe people are more important than possessions. See, that's the thing. There isn't a timetable, and that's the number one question everyone asks. Well, when is this going to happen? But the thing is it could happen at any time. The only country that's taken any provision is China, which has built these ghost cities because, remember I had said that the southeastern China plate was going to be sinking. Well, Jakarta, Indonesia, parts of it are 85 feet below sea level. That sinking is almost 70% complete in that tip of the Southeast Asian plate. But all the other earth changes have stopped. And I was talking to Nancy on the phone. I said, that I heard that these metal boxes were found on the beaches in Oregon and they were vibrating. And I said, I think there's extraterrestrial devices, but it is true. On all the faults of the Earth, there are tens of thousands of these boxes vibrating, and what they're doing is, instead of letting the movement of the plates, because the roiling of the magma deep in the core of the Earth is causing these quakes and these other shifts, the north end of South America is going to move to the west, the north end of Africa is going to move to the east, the Atlantic is going to get wider, the Pacific is going to get narrower. So there's all these things. And so anyway, these metal boxes have put that off, and the reason why is because they want to have the massive social change. And you can imagine if the president does announce it, of course there's going to be massive social change. So Planet X is not going anywhere. It's sitting there. And the clump of four planets, the dark twin, Venus, the Earth, and Planet X are still rotating around the sun, but they're not moving in relation to each other. And the tail is stretched towards the Earth, so that rock that came down over Russia and the other ones that were seen over San Francisco and Cuba and Japan are all from the tail of planet rocks, and there's trillions of them. So this is going to be a big disaster. So when the president announces it, and I mean, I'm not sitting in his office privy to whatever they're deciding, but I can tell you this. They really don't want people to he's not going to use the word Planet X. He's going to say, look, Reagan signed an executive order making it top secret. Every president signed on, but I'm such a humanitarian that I'm telling you that there has been a planet between the Earth and the Sun for 9 years, and why not? I mean, if it separates from the Sun where every single person on Earth looks up and goes, oh my God, what's that? And the glowing area, the thing that's at the 5 o'clock position, is the tail, which is sort of transparent, translucent, whatever you want to say, because it's a cloud of dust, or red iron oxide dust. It's lit by the sun, and you can see that from Earth. So that's what people are taking pictures of, is the tail of Planet X stretching towards the Earth. And you can't see Planet X itself, but one of these days, when it gets far enough from the sun, you are going to see that the Council of Worlds has told the president, you've got to announce it. So you can speculate that the first thing he would say is Ronald Reagan had an executive order that this is top secret, and every other president signed on, but now I'm going to be the one who's breaking that because everybody has to know that. How can he not announce it? Because Planet X pulls the magnetic bar of the Great Atlantic Rift down towards it, and then as the Earth continues to shift and the Atlantic no longer faces the sun, then the North Pole, which doesn't like the North Pole of Planet X, pushes the North Pole of the Earth back. So you get these wobbles, and what you get is this gigantic loops in the jet stream. So normally the jet stream moves from west to east, but now if you notice these weather maps, and why wouldn't you with all these big storms? So everybody's more interested in the weather than ever because it's really can be life or death. And what you get is these giant arcs of cold air coming down from the Arctic, and 30 miles to the east, you've got this giant arc of tropical air coming up from the Caribbean, and you've got this clash or fronts that makes these gigantic storms. I mean, look at Hurricane Sandy. And, if the government told the truth, they should say nobody should rebuild anywhere. But it's just like Katrina in New Orleans. People are saying, well, we're going to bring it back, and it's going to be so meaningful, and we're going to have Seaside Heights, New Jersey, ready for the tourist season. And, but the truth is nobody should be there now at all because this is right in the danger zone. They should be saying, well, we're going to move anyone that wants to go from the coast. And that's the interesting thing. The Zetas have said even when this is announced, probably only as much as 60%, but no more than that, are going to go, oh, my God, we've got to go to safety. And the rest are going to go, well, I really don't want to change anything, so I'm going to keep going to work. And if a tidal wave washes over me, then that's it. I'll just die. Well, okay, you're entitled. That's what this life is like. You're entitled to be a skeptic. You're entitled to be in denial, and you're entitled to die in it. But there's no reason for you to do that. So the binary star is quite a distance away. That's why it takes 3,657 years for Planet X to return. So it's something we've never seen because it's burned out, but it is a huge body, and that's where it started. And evidently, Planet X has been coming here at least 2 billion years. So, it wasn't that the Anunnaki were always there. They reached a point where they decided they wanted to powder the gold and put it in their atmosphere to keep the planet a little bit warmer. It's got giant hot magma in its core, and it's got water, which has the highest specific heat of any substance in the universe, so it holds heat. It takes longer to heat water than anything in the universe, and water holds heat longer than any. So, but they were getting cold, so that's where the whole quest for gold came from. That Phobos is a spaceship because it's hollowed out and it's got chambers in it because they use ground-penetrating radar. But actually, Phobos is one giant gold nugget, and the Anunnaki, since they came back, have been mining. Go do a search in Wyoming. Dick Cheney tried to get the Wyoming legislature, and he only failed by a few votes, to buy a used aircraft carrier. Now, with Wyoming, Edgar Cayce said that Omaha was going to be the greatest seaport in North America after pole shift, and evidently he's planning that the Mississippi will split wider, saltwater will go up to the Great Lakes, and then up the Missouri and the Platte rivers, and then maybe the Red River. And I guess they were planning to, keep it, in the Great Lakes or in the Gulf, and then float it right up to Wyoming. But you can see why he would want that. It's got nuclear power. It's got a hospital. It holds 5,000 people, and he could load it with fighter strike jets, and be king of the world. And you look at the billionaires around the earth, they're trying to start their own space program. So nobody's going to leave Earth and come back as kings of the earth afterwards. No, they're all going to have to go through it. And whether you're a billionaire or not, you're going to have to roll up your sleeves. So, you've heard of the idea of these deep underground bunkers everybody was going to head. But, how well are they going to survive in 10-plus power earthquakes? So they're not. But then, after pole shift, at the hour of pole shift, when the tidal waves start, then everyone's going to, after that, there won't be any earthquakes, so people are going to want to be underground, because how are you going to survive? People are going to want to be underground, because how are you going to survive?
There are increasing indications that Planet X, also known as Nibiru, is moving in a precise direction towards planet Earth. So what does this suggest for those of us who dwell on this planet? Is there actually a biblical link that correlates with the end times as we know it? Many of you believe that NASA and other government bodies, such as the Pentagon and the CIA, are aware of its approach. Your belief carries considerable weight, considering the recent publication of scientific studies claiming that there is proof of an unnamed mysterious planet lurking beyond Pluto. The claim was determined by observations of gravitational influences on a group of celestial bodies called the extreme trans-Neptunian objects, which are orbiting our Sun beyond Neptune. The approach of the mysterious planet Nibiru is at present sending waves of charged plasmatic energy particles through our solar system. The flow of energy will finally affect the core flows of the Earth and result in catastrophic changes in Earth's climate, which is without a doubt occurring on an escalated scale. Planet Earth has been feeling the effects of this inbound planet or system of planets since 1996, with records showing a troublesome increase in seismic and volcanic activity, extreme weather patterns, and catastrophic disasters. U.S. and Russian governments are aware of its approach, as is the Vatican hierarchy, which is keeping a watchful eye on the heavens with their sophisticated telescope perched high in the mountains of Arizona. In the meantime, the public is being kept in the dark regarding this approaching apocalypse. The consensus by many is that such an event would annihilate 2/3 of the world's population, while 2/3 of those who survive the initial impact will perish over time due to starvation and exposure to the elements. The question that persists with respect to Planet X is whether this mysterious planet that scientists now claim exists beyond Pluto is the same planet that is believed to have wiped out much of humanity thousands of years ago. There is, however, more to the story than what meets the eye. Based on the research study known as extreme trans-Neptunian objects and the Kazai mechanism, signaling the presence of trans-Plutonian planets, posted in 2014 in the Journal Monthly Notices of the Royal Astronomical Society letters, there are at least 2 planets, part of our solar system, larger than Earth, lurking out there beyond Pluto, and whose existence can be noticed through their gravitational influences. So it is fair to say that NASA understands that these planetary objects are a serious threat to our civilization. It is widely perceived that researchers had proposed that the so-called Planet X was at least 10 times as large as Earth and was most likely situated at a distance of 250 astronomical units from our Sun, with an orbit of 10 to 20,000 years. There is an understanding that an approaching large body or a star system of planets and moons can trigger considerable differences in magnetic activity, and recent data from our magnetosphere indicates that this is what is now taking place. There were even suggestions that Google Sky had revealed an area in space that had been censored by NASA, showing the winged globe moving through our solar system. So are these subtle warnings an earnest attempt to inform us that an apocalyptic situation is at hand, which is coming from out of this world, something previously unknown to humanity, but which have memories in our subconscious from past lives and records kept over the ages? If we consider the ancient era of Atlantis and Lemuria and what happened to these civilizations, is it any wonder that NASA would redact the location of this incoming body on Google Sky or in their own imagery? Every week, NASA appears to have learned something new that was unimaginable, and yet they want us to imagine that Planet X Nibiru is unreal. As you can envision, the gravitational consequences of a sizable planet moving close to the inner solar system would spell huge problems for planet Earth. Not only are we witnessing climate extremes and a shifting of the Earth, but we are now bearing witness to the very real observations that the 4 seasons, as we have known them, are now blending. So with all of this in mind, we can now ascertain why certain governments are taking steps to protect their own interests as they prepare for the arrival and the aftermath of this large planetary body or system of planets moving through our solar system. Here is some news that has been widely reported, but which some of you may not be aware of. Russia recently completed building or updating some 5,000 shelters in Moscow. They actually have been quite open about what they are doing, but they haven't specifically stated the actual reason for constructing or updating these shelters. But we do know that they have some facilities that can accommodate up to 100,000 people. The United States is estimated to have over 150 deep underground military bases. Coincidentally, a huge military underground city exists below the Denver airport. Now, these are entire underground cities that have been under construction since the 1980s. But this is a need-to-know classification that is underway and is never published in advance for fear of destabilizing the economy. If you do any research of this topic, you are bound to run into various forms of disinformation. Now, some of it intentional, but much of it produced by uneducated individuals within the public. Until the discovery of Planet X, astronomers had regarded the writings of the ancient Sumerians about this object as legend. When Planet X was discovered in 1983, they suddenly learned that the Sumerians were not the primitive people they had been made out to be by intellectuals of today. Have you ever wondered what the real purpose of the Hubble Space Telescope was intended for? It was not to explore the universe and the solar system, as some have suggested. Rather, the reason for constructing this multi-billion-dollar telescope and then placing it in orbit was for the purpose of observing the inbound Planet X. A June 6th interview with a Hubble insider states this fact as to the Hubble's purpose. He watched this mysterious body through the Hubble telescope and stated that this thing looked as if it was nearby. And the Hubble got cut off, and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmission. So let's listen to this interview.
Back in the 1950s, most people aren't aware of it, but there was a scientific storm in America all through the late 50s about this thing out there in space, because the astronomers were all watching it, and that was back when they weren't afraid to talk about it. It was in the science magazines. I mean, I had a subscription to, like, Popular Science, and hell, it was on the front cover of the magazine one day in, like, 1961. And I was really excited when I saw it, because here's this giant red planet on the horizon of the California coast, and a humongous tidal wave coming in towards the coast, and having grew up in the mountains of the Sierras, and this thing in the magazine, it said this tidal wave coming in was going to be at least 3 miles high, and I went in and showed it to everybody in the house, and they laughed, and they said, look, it says right here, there's nothing to worry about. It won't be here for another 50 years. Hey, guess what? That 50 years has came and gone, and this baby's out there in the sky. They've been watching it. I watched it, and I can tell you, this thing has got so much trash coming around it. You know how we live in a solar system? We've got 9 planets and a big sun. This thing has got 7 planets and its own sun. The years as it went by and we watched it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally, about 2008, we could see this thing like it was across the street. And we could see that it was a blazing hot ball of fire giving out sparkles of red iron oxide dust for thousands of miles in every direction. And you could see the planets circulating it. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I really am nervous about. I think this thing's got a planet like ours circling it. This is its own solar system. We're about to have a solar system come through the middle of our solar system. This can't be good. But unfortunately, it looks as though that's what's going to happen. We were looking at asteroids right close to this thing. There's asteroids that are floating around right near that are orbiting the main sun itself. These things appear to be about 500 miles across. This thing looks like a giant red teardrop-shaped dust cloud, and you can see once if you're able to see it up close like we did, you can see every speck out there. Now, these CIA people that I know say that we're not going to be that close to it when it goes past us. They're saying that in order to attain breakaway speed, when it comes up around the backside of the sun, its speed will at least double, possibly more, which will put it here earlier than everybody is saying it will. and that this thing will probably be about 20 million miles from us when it crosses in front of us. And then as soon as it flips us upside down, we're going to go into its debris field. These CIA guys told me that this pole shift will probably happen from start to finish in around 28 minutes. That doesn't give you a lot of warning. When you see that thing out there in the sky, you're going to have to run as fast as you can to your underground facility, because this is going to happen so fast. Now, see, here's another thing nobody's talking about. You've got this giant iron planet that they say is 47,000 miles across, getting ready to come up past us, and when it starts to approach us, it's going to start and have real serious effects.
So is it a planet or a failed star?
It's not a failed star. You know, I saw this thing up close. It did not look like a failed star. It looked just like our sun.
Right.
Okay. Would you call our sun a failed star?
No. Okay. Well, you had said planet. I wasn't sure if it was like a failed star, brown dwarf, or a full sun. So it's a full sun?
It looks to me like a miniature sun, just like the one we have. The only difference is our sun is giving off flames and stuff, and this one's doing the same thing as it, but it's giving off this red iron oxide cloud of dust around it, and until it got close, we couldn't even tell what was in there. We could see it was hot, and it looked like it was just a dull red when we were first able to discern it through the red cloud, but as it approached, it started to become more apparent that this thing is just orange hot,
right.
And it's got this enormous, and I mean enormous, at least 50 or 100,000 miles on each side of it, this red dust cloud that goes all the way around it. I know when we were watching it, as it started to make the upward swing to approach behind our sun, it was amazing. The red dust cloud settled down. Instead of being round, it started to settle down into a V, like wings, upside-down wings.
Right.
And I thought, boy, I wonder if that's where the ancient Sumerians got the idea this thing had wings, because, you know, centrifugal force is a funny thing. When it comes back up around the planet, when we see it in the sky, my guess is it's going to look like it's got wings, because centrifugal force is going to be pulling the red iron oxide dust and particles out to one side. This thing's going to look like a big red dragon, exactly like all the ancient Sumerians and the Chinese and all the rest of them that had documented this thing's passing before. It didn't look like a white ball or a snow cloud or nothing. It looked like a big red iron oxide dust cloud with a superheated star in the middle of it. And I mean, you know, and that's what we've seen. So, you know, I don't care what anybody else says. There's a possibility. There's more than one thing out there. You know, I watched it through the Hubble Space Telescope, and when this thing looked like it was across the street, the Hubble got cut off and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmissions we had to watch. And we know that the Hubble, in order to be in the shadow of the Earth, had to be at an angle, and so that meant it was looking downward, and this thing was coming up underneath of us, and I tell you the honest to God truth, I personally think this thing is real close to us right now, but, you know, that's just my general feeling that, you know, and I'm a pretty psychic guy, I have the feeling that this thing is right close by and that we're going to see it any time, okay? Because, listen, they've known about this thing forever. And I mean, they've known about it forever. I mean, if I read about it in a science magazine in 1961, that tells you that, I mean, it's only 1,800 years away. How could they not be able to see it when it came around the backside of the last sun and headed this way?
Right.
You have to know they've been watching it, because if you know, Carl Sagan was showing stuff that they took with their old telescopes that was billions and billions of miles away, and this thing's only 1,800 years away. Well, and by 1930 it was only 70 years away. You know, we do estimate that this thing, let me give you a thing, maybe you can figure out your own timeline. We estimated that this thing is traveling around 3,500 miles an hour, okay?
Okay.
That was our estimate of its speed. Now, it has been picking up speed, and that's the reason why we think it's going to arrive early, because when it comes around the backside of the sun, it's got to double that speed in order to attain breakaway speed to leave the sun and not wind up orbiting it. It's never orbited the sun in the past that we know of, so that means that it's going to have to attain breakaway speed to head back out into space. Now, you look at the NASA videos, photos, and all this other crap those morons put on the internet. This thing is coming in. It's going to, as soon as it goes around the top of the sun, it's going to go back out into space.
Right.
And it's going to do this really fast. When it goes past us, it's going to go past us so fast that we'll almost have no time to get ready. That's my opinion. But, you know, just drawing it out on paper a few times and thinking about it, and I went, you know, if this thing picks up enough speed to make breakaway speed, then that means it's going to come past us. You know, this thing, according to what I was told, is that this thing is approximately 47,000 miles in diameter, you know, 4 or 5 times the size of the Earth, and it'll come past us, and we won't have a lot of warning, and we won't get to see it in the sky until it's on us. Now, I was told that the poles are not shifting at 42 miles a year. They're shifting at 42 miles a day. And the reason is because this planet is rolling over to face this thing. Now, when it goes by, it's not going to push our North Pole away. It's going to grab our southern pole with its northern pole, and it's going to be like somebody kicked this planet in the ass. That earthquake that it talks about in Revelations, when the opening of the sixth seal comes, from what I've been told, that's very accurate, because that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a massive earthquake when it locks onto us. As it goes past us, we're going to follow it right upside down. The oceans are just going to be roaring from pole to pole, as you could well guess they would, because if you take a planet that's 7,000 miles across and roll it upside down in 30 minutes, you're going to have some real serious problems with wind and water. We should be preparing to expect this thing to show up any time.
So this particular insider is stating in the most revealing terms that something ominous is heading our way that NASA has known about for decades. Nibiru, aka Planet X, and referred to by the Vatican as Wormwood, has a mass that is 3 to 5 times the mass of Jupiter. Its composition is cesium, iron oxide, iron, oxygen, and ozone. And according to the interview by the Hubble Insider, it consists of 7 planets and moons that orbit it and innumerable asteroids. Its existence is known by all of the major governments of the world, and they are prepared, as I described earlier in this presentation. The object is very big, and until recently it is a red dwarf star visible only in the infrared spectrum. The agent claims that the government is monitoring the system and that in 2008 it could be seen in high detail with infrared telescopes. But the manner of observation is beginning to change. Using deductive logic, a number of independent videos are capturing its close approach now. We can speculate about its existence and whether the images and videos being published on a regular basis are genuine captures. But it doesn't change the narrative that something big is out there. Even the most reputable scientists are coming to the same conclusion that we have been warning about for many years now. That whatever is out there must be found and determined as to its impact upon the solar system and planet Earth. So it's no longer a question of whether it actually exists, but rather its actual location and how long before its absolute impact will be felt on our planet. In closing, I wanted to share with you a few troubling observations that were posted recently on Facebook. The first one is a capture from the Skycam Observatory in Deakin, Australia, showing the two-sun phenomenon. Now, the sun's companion has been visible in this side-by-side view on all Skycam for several days now, which indicates that the Nemesis system is rising to the ecliptic, as I mentioned in the video which I published on October the 28th. So something is definitely taking place now, and it behooves us to start paying careful attention to the skies. So if any of our viewers and subscribers have anything of value, any type of information or images you care to share with us, please forward them over here for a review as soon as you can. Also mentioned in this video presentation was the indication that this system would be accompanied by a long trail of debris consisting of fairly large-sized meteors and asteroids. The number of space objects that are penetrating the Earth's magnetic field has increased substantially in the past couple of years. So take a look at this incredible capture from Japan on October the 31st.
Now, what I'm going to show you here is the approximate position of the Nibiru and its 7 planets coming in. Because this is apparently a genuine photograph, in the center there with this red with the black dot and the what appears to be a planet up to the left. It's coming in, this photograph, what I'm going to show you on Stellarium, is set up for Hobart, Tasmania, south of Australia. And you'll see Jupiter. Now if you just notice around here, the stars aren't that numerous, and I think what's happening is that the light coming from the distant stars are being absorbed into the rear of the magnetic field because the light is being bent. I mean, light is bending in space all the time. In the old Cathay ray tubes, which is the old television sets, that's how a television set works. You bend the light electrons coming at the screen. So I'll now go over to Stellarium and show you the same scene basically. So there's Jupiter there. I'll pull that over. So in this area here is where I was showing you. Now I'm going to show you what happens when we get out and away from that spot that I've determined where this is going to be, and you'll see how the light comes on. And then as we go back towards where I think that the Nibiru object is the lights go out, so I go back again, the lights go on. So the light is being bent and absorbed by the Nibiru object. So we'll go up now towards Taurus, which is up here, and you'll see the light comes on again. There's Taurus there. The light's going off again. So possibly this hasn't been noticed by the authorities. I'll just go up again. Now she comes on again. Come back down. Jupiter just goes off screen. Now we'll go left and right. Give it some perspective. The light comes on, off. The light comes on again. So it would appear to be around this area here. Not to say that it is, but it appears to be that's where the effect is occurring. Now, it could be behind Jupiter itself. It could be over this area here, but somewhere in this general vicinity. So that's just a little update on what I've been able to determine could be a possible indication where it is coming in from. And of course Castor and Pollux down here is the twins, first and second coming. So I'll talk to you later.
Planet X special bulletin: a dwarf star and 7 planets are coming in. For the past few hours I've been listening to Patty Brassard, spelled Brass, B-R-A-S-S-A-R-D, a former NASA employee who built the robots which are being used on Fukushima at this moment. She tells of an incoming solar system with 7 planets and says that by August 11th, 2013, the existence of Planet X will be undeniable. She says when this object lines up with our sun on August 17th, 2013, another major earthquake will occur. This time, though, the object will be only 0.32 AU away from the Earth. The unit AU stands for astronomical unit. That's the distance from the Earth to the Sun, previously measured at 93 million miles. But Patty says that the Earth is being pulled in toward the Sun, and this elongates the orbit and will make summers very, very hot and winters the coldest you've ever experienced. More frighteningly, she said that our electric grid will go down, and when it does, all nuclear power plants will go down too. It is electricity which keeps the reactors cool, and when the electric grid goes, the power plant has only hours on auxiliary power before that too fails. And from what I understand, that means total meltdown. And she says you should locate these nuclear power plants. She said there are over 100 in the United States alone. And make sure that you're not near one. I saw a map. They're all over the East Coast. In fact, I look out the window and I can see one. She said the kill zone in Fukushima was 150 miles. Everybody within 150 miles dies when the nuclear power plants melt down. When I looked out the window and saw one at Palo Verde, I put my head between my legs and kissed my ass goodbye. Patty's in Massachusetts and her basement is at sea level, so she does not intend to survive the passing of Planet X. She said Russian and Israeli troops are here to round up the people who protest and put them into the FEMA camps, that's what they were built for. She also said that those buildings have gas pipes 2 feet thick in diameter and that they don't want the people on the surface to survive. She talks about Auschwitz, and I gather that they're going to gas the people in there. Don't go to a FEMA camp under any circumstances. You will never come out alive, according to Patty. She said that the coffins can accommodate 3 bodies, and if you wind up in a FEMA camp, you might as well be in Auschwitz under Hitler, because they didn't rig gas to these quarters to make sure that you're nice and comfortable. The government never gave a rat's ass about you or your comfort. It's always been about them. They want you dead, and now the truth is coming out from yet another whistleblower. She said all those near the coast are finished. She said we will see the seas rise 200 feet just from the melting of the South Pole, and that the melting is occurring not from the top down, as you might expect from global warming, but from the bottom up. In addition to 200 feet rise in sea levels from the melting of the South Pole, she said that as this object gets closer, it will stop the rotation of the Earth. And as it slows down and the seas keep moving, she says because of the moon, that the moon controls the waters, and that water will continue to move at 1,000 miles per hour, and that anyone living near the coast is finished. Now this follows 3 days of darkness, which she says is caused by an eclipse. This object is between the sun and us. She says that Mars is getting hammered right now with all the debris from the tail, and she recommends that if you want to survive, that you find the highest place on Earth and get underground. Dig a hole. She says bring a camper and bury it under 3 feet of earth. She says rent a backhoe or something to cover it up. I think this is all insanity. What are you going to do? Breathe radioactive air and survive? You're going to go fishing? Catch fish in order to eat? She says the worst of this will be from the end of August until November. That's 4 months. How are you going to survive? September, October, November. 3 months. Each person needs half a gallon of water every day. Fresh water, not radioactive water. I think most of us had better put our heads between our legs and kiss our ass goodbye. All those things I spoke about in my Planet X videos, I have about 40 of them. One of them has over 1 million views. And all those things I talked about turn out to be true. And nobody is sadder than me about that. I wanted it to be wrong. I wanted the earthquakes and volcanoes and sinkholes to be some kind of hoax. But who has the ability to cause earthquakes and volcanoes and sinkholes just to have fun? It's not easy to fake a quake, Jake. This is not a mistake. California, Patty says, will drop into the ocean. It's somewhere between the 17th of August, 2013, and the 26th of August. She says there will be a magnitude 15 quake, centered in Seattle, Washington. So I picked up the phone and called all my friends and told them, and they laughed at me. Oh, that's crazy. Go back to sleep. Patty says her own family has scheduled a family reunion from the 10th of August to the 17th. So that tells you how serious her own family is about her words. I think it's very serious. You don't call in all the ambassadors from all the embassies and close the embassies on a whim. These people have tickets to the underground facilities, and you don't, because you are a dirtbag. That's what I've been saying all along. They treat you, the host of the parasites, like a dirtbag. You paid for all of those underground facilities over the past 50 years, and now you're not invited. And so they expect when the people learn the truth, they're going to be angry. They're going to get their guns, and they're going to try to kill somebody. And you're going to end up killing one of our own who's just uninformed. He thinks he's serving his country. He thinks he's a hero. And you're going to kill him? It'd be better if you talk to him. Talk to all military. Talk to all cops. And tell them what's going on, because in the next 10 to 20 days, there's going to be a great awakening by everyone who realizes we are finished. You can't jump in your car and run to get something at the grocery store if the UV A, B, and C are coming down on you. It's deadly. Microwaves will cook your car. She says that microwaves will heat up anything that's metal. It will be red hot from the sun. If California has a 15 magnitude earthquake, do you realize what that will do? And there is nobody to come in and rescue anybody. Remember when all those buildings and freeways fell on people in past earthquakes? Those were 6s and 7s. This is a 15. And every number you go up, it's 10 times more powerful. That means that a 15 is 1 billion times more powerful than a 6. A 6.0 compared to a 15 is 9 numbers up. That's 10 to the 9th power. That's 1 billion times more powerful. Nobody can survive a 15. Nobody. Not 1 billion times more powerful than the ones that brought down the Nimitz freeway and crushed cars as flat as a pancake. All that metal and steel crushed to a pancake with people inside them. I lived in California for about 30 years. I know the San Andreas Fault. I know where it goes in Los Angeles. I know where it goes in San Francisco. But once you get into Oregon and Washington, I don't know much about the San Andreas Fault. I understand that it goes all the way to Alaska. Now, if these plates fracture and California sinks because of lack of support, the pulling away from that plate, the Pacific plate, the tsunami that will come into Los Angeles could be very high. But Patty says we're going to lose much of California. And she says that Tagish Lake, Alaska, will be the new South Pole, that the pole shift has already begun. Tagish Lake, Alaska, I looked it up. There's a Canadian province. Most of Tagish Lake is in that province, BC, might be British Columbia. But as soon as you go over into the U.S. side, Alaska, there's still part of the lake there, a very small part. But she says just north of there will be the new South Pole. Now, that's not what Nancy Lieder said. Nancy Lieder had the North Pole off the coast of Brazil and the South Pole dead center in Saudi Arabia, I believe. Maybe it was reversed. Maybe the North Pole was Saudi Arabia and the South Pole was off the coast of Brazil. That's east of Brazil. Now Patty's telling us, with inside information, that Tagish Lake, Alaska, will be the new South Pole. I believe that the pole shift is already underway because I've seen the map where the North Pole is moving. It's moving very quickly and it's accelerating. As I recall, the North Pole was headed toward Siberia, and that it would arrive in Siberia in January of 2014. But I'm recalling this from memory. I can't be sure. I didn't look it up. But I looked up Tagish Lake, Alaska. I spun the globe. I turned it upside down so that was the South Pole, and I spun the globe. And I found that Arizona will be in the southern hemisphere, and Australia will be in the northern hemisphere. Imagine that. Arizona will be the land down under. And it's too bad that I'll be dead in just 10 days or so, because I was looking forward to looking up into those southern skies at night and having the experience of seeing things completely different. Now, you may recall on my previous Planet X videos, I spoke about microwaves cooking everything when the Van Allen belt collapses, and very, very few people understood that. They tell me they've got a garden, they're going to go camping, they'll be all right. And I knew that they had no idea what a microwave was, or how it cooks you, or how the Van Allen belt protects us, and that's going to collapse because this star is enormous. I always ridiculed those who said that this star was 4 times the size of Jupiter. Patty says that just one of the 7 planets is 4 times the size of Jupiter. She said that the asteroid belt was a planet, and it got hit head-on by one of these things in the tail of Planet X, and it got smashed to pieces, and that Jupiter absorbed most of it, and the asteroid belt is just what's left over. Now imagine that you cannot go outside even to pee for 6 weeks because there will be deadly, she calls them UVA, UVB, and UVC, ultraviolet A, B, and C rays, which kill everything. I never heard of ultraviolet A, B, and C. I knew that ultraviolet rays kill everything, especially the things we depend on. That's why I say, if it kills the things we depend on for survival, how are you going to survive? She says that some people will survive. Maybe those microorganisms will be inside the caves. I don't know. I think life is going to be extremely difficult. I hope that the first to die are those in the underground facilities, the so-called elite and government, because they are the most evil. And all you religious people who think that Jesus is going to save you, well, you're going to find out. Now, this announcement that I'm making to you is the most grave announcement I have ever made about anything. And while Patty gives advice about how to survive, she says, dig a hole, cover it with at least 3 feet of dirt, put some sort of camper or something in there, rent a Caterpillar or something, it costs $200 a day, and dig a big hole in your backyard, put your camper in there, and then cover it up with 3 feet of dirt. That's crazy. You won't have food. You won't have water. You won't be able to go outside. How are you going to flush the toilet? If you do survive, you're going to be a totally mind-controlled, chipped slave for the elite if they survive. But she says that these underground facilities, which are now stocked with food that is uncontaminated by Fukushima radiation, because they've been stocking those underground facilities for decades. A truck driver called in, a woman, and said she delivered things to Denver Airport, the underground facility there, and they were labeled just general merchandise. So there's first-hand testimony that these underground facilities were stocked. But Patty says that these underground facilities are going to rupture and water is going to flood in and drown most of the people that are the so-called elite. Now, they left us up here to die like a bunch of dirt bags. I imagine that they have cameras everywhere to watch what's going on, and they're going to be down there in their cushy bunkers watching us die and suffer and squirm. And if a fracture occurs and water floods in, I would like to have a camera to watch them drown like rats. If that water is from the Pacific Ocean, maybe it will be full of radiation, and maybe it will contaminate all of their fresh food down there. Maybe the air that comes in will be full of radiation, because all over America, tests are showing that our air is just full of radiation. And maybe this is why the psychic, the French psychic, could not see past 2012. Maybe that's why all those who did time travel said that there was a barrier after 2012. When pressed, the French psychic said, 2 possible reasons: we have a war with aliens, or I'm dead, and that's why I can't see beyond 2012. Well, you've got strontium in the air, which causes bone cancer, and plutonium, which affects all the organs and tissues. And thousands are already dying from the radiation from Fukushima. Remember that Fukushima is about 10 times worse than Chernobyl. Chernobyl was 180 tons of radioactive material, and Fukushima was 1,760 tons. So that's almost 10 times as much. Fukushima is 9 or 10 times as bad as Chernobyl. I've got some shrimp and salmon in the freezer, and I think I'm going to go cook it while the electricity is still on. I already ate all the butter pecan ice cream, and if you have any ice cream that you can't eat, call me. I'll be over there faster than you can say, "Those dirty bastards in government saved themselves and left us out here to die." How long does it take to say that? How do you like this? The U.S. military is guarding the DUMBs so that you can't get in. They will shoot to kill. They will kill Americans to prevent them from getting into the underground facilities. Well, I don't want to breathe the same air those people breathe. I might wind up like them. So no thanks. I'm not interested in going into a DUMB. These military have already been tested to see if they are loyal to the head Nazi, and they proved that they will follow orders. They will kill anyone they are told to kill. And they think they're heroes. Their reality is not the same as your reality. They live in an illusionary world. I would consider it mental illness, because they don't know reality. Soon all the banks will be closed, and you won't be able to get any money out. And I have been advocating that you get your money out of the bank anyway, and what I have seen on this video with Patty is that the money you hold will only be worth something for a little while longer. And soon, nobody will be interested in your money. They're not going to trade real food for fake money. We have been expecting a currency collapse anyway. I just had no idea that it would turn out like this. If you have a house that's made of cement block and a roof that's not made of wood, that's valuable. And there isn't any amount of money that I would trade for such a house. Now the value system changes. If you've got a caterpillar, a bulldozer, a backhoe, this is extremely valuable. This is worth millions of dollars, even if you paid $6,000 for it, because this is the difference between life and death. Perhaps. I don't know what you call life after something like this. You come out of your nest and breathe radioactive material that will be in the air for thousands of years. You call that life? Look up Patty Brassard, Brassard, on YouTube. Watch the videos, the interviews. There's one with Veritas Radio out of Tucson, and that interviewer is very smart. The sound quality is pretty good. There's another one where they talk about the kill shot, and they put the date August 5th, 2013. The sound quality is very poor. Very, very poor. It's difficult to hear the announcer. It's difficult to hear his guest. There was no attention whatsoever given to this video on quality, and if you're able to get anything out of it, that's great. There's a lot of blank space, so it means the audio was not edited, and because of these reasons, it's not a very good quality video. But it's the best you have at this time. You might wonder what is going to happen to Patty. Well, she said she's old, and she's already lived far longer than she expected to. She's falling apart because she carried an M16 across her chest, and the bullets were either depleted uranium or enriched uranium. Can you imagine the U.S. government having soldiers carry radioactive material so close to the chest? This is disgusting, disgusting. And this story should spread to all military so they know how the government really thinks of them. Listen to Patty's testimony. She was in Iraq. She was in communications. These lives meant nothing to the Nazis. Nothing. They were pawns, and the military should understand that. I didn't know that they were using enriched uranium. I knew they were using depleted uranium, but I thought it was only for shells. She said when they are trying to penetrate the ground, they use enriched uranium. These are war crimes. That's who your government is. They're war criminals. They're false flag inside job terrorists. And Patty says the last 4 major terrorist attacks were all inside jobs. And it was done in order to take the guns because they can't pay the Chinese in gold, and so they offered them coastal properties. The Chinese wanted coastal properties, but they said, you disarm the people first. That's what Patty said. That shows you she has a lot of inside information. Now remember, August to November, about 4 months, will be the roughest part of the passing of Planet X. She said if you want to save yourself, it's already too late. She produced some very believable images to support her claims, and she claims to be able to access computers at NASA and EPA and other government agencies. And she revealed that NASA is not a government agency, it's a private corporation. She said it's no more government than the Federal Reserve is. There's one more thing I would like to tell you. She said that 6 astronomers or scientists, these are top astronomers and scientists, had decided that they were going to talk and tell the people, and all 6 of them were killed recently. I haven't heard of it. I don't know who the scientists are, but I think that Patty might be murdered soon also. I would not be surprised. In fact, I am also looking for a bullet, but I'm old and it doesn't matter if they kill me. I don't want to die of thirst. I don't want to die frying under a microwave sky or dying under UV light, ultraviolet light. This is not for me. I'm going to continue my effort to inform and let the chips fall where they may. You all have a right to know what's coming, and your Nazi government will not tell you anything because they want you dead. That's the way it's been for a long time now, and I've been saying it from my first video because I've been reading and putting the pieces of the gigantic puzzle together, and I know what evil looks like. Government is pure evil. And if you didn't know that before today, the next 10 days are going to be enlightening, trust me. And all that propaganda you've been sucking up on the TV will now be blown away when the electric grid goes off and you have no TV and no drinking water. You'll be defecating outside because the house stinks from a toilet that can't be flushed. There's no water. The government wants you dead, and you're better off dead. And all you religious people out there who hounded me relentlessly and dumped your scriptures on my channel, I hope Jesus saves you from the frying sun's rays. And I got some advice for you. Pray while you cook. That's as much as I can say at this time. Have a wonderful day, and thank